You're listening to The Performance-Driven Warehouse, turning complex operational data into measurable performance. The modern warehouse looks nothing like what it did 20, 10, or even 5 years ago. Thanks to the speed of the markets, tech advances, and changing business processes, the warehouse itself has evolved into a complex network of people, systems, and automation. Balancing all of this to keep on top of volatility, disruptions, and even new opportunities is kind of an art form. Successful warehouse management depends on how well you can see everything that's happening across your network. And that network is powered by data. But what good is all the data in the world if it's not under the right lens and connected in a strategic way so you can understand and act on it? In order to gain the visibility to manage cost, performance, and capacity in real time, you need to unify your data. That's what today's warehouse performance management is all about. Hello, I'm Dan Keto. Welcome to the Performance-Driven Warehouse, where industry experts and operators share how they've transformed data complexity into operational clarity. Good afternoon. On today's episode of the Easy Metrics podcast, we're joined by Dr. Muddassir Ahmed, a globally recognized supply chain digitalization expert, top 10 global supply chain influencer, and founder and CEO of SCM Dojo, the world's largest supply chain learning and capability building platform. With nearly 2 decades of international leadership experience across manufacturing, logistics, and automotive supply chains, and having worked with organizations like Bridgestone, Volvo, Cars, Eaton, and Doncasters, Dr. Ahmed helps organizations turn digital transformation from theory into measurable results. Through SCM Dojo, he has built a global ecosystem focused on practical skills, data-driven decision-making, and ROI-focused adoption of AI, analytics, and modern supply chain technologies. Today's conversation explores how warehouse leaders can move beyond disconnected systems and build the data-driven capabilities required for successful automation and AI adoption. Welcome to the show, Dr. Ahmed.
Hi, thanks for having me. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. So, Dr. Ahmed, tell me how you came up with Supply Chain Management Dojo. What led you to that? It's a fascinating, progression of your career, and it looks like you've identified a need. So, tell me about your background and how you have built this market-leading website.
No, thank you. So, first about name, people would have asked me what is the name. So, SCM is Supply Chain Management. Dojo is a Japanese word which means place to stay and meditate. I work in industry about now 20 years. I was in Eaton, American company, about 12 years, and I was head of planning logistics for Bridgestone. And I've noticed one thing, that most of the people who end up in supply chain were not actually supply chain educated. Maybe you have 20 or 35 people working, only 3 or 4 have supply chain education, and the rest are, for example, somebody good in basically Excel, or you become a planner. Somebody good in following SNOP, you become in logistics. Or anybody who's not good in anything, let's join procurement, right? So the reason, and when I try to give them a job, most of the people are good in following SOPs or work instructions and doing the task. But if you ask them to solve a problem or think creatively, they are not so good. The reason was they haven't been trained on theory, because, to drive continuous improvement, you have to have some level of theory to, improve stuff. So, for example, if somebody wants to improve the planning parameters, you have to understand how the MRP works and how the BOM structure work and so on and so forth. But then the issue was the supply chain education in general was very expensive, right? If you go to historical SIPs or MSIPs, it takes $3,000-$4,000. And if you got 20 people or 25 people working for you, it's very difficult to get money approved, especially for education. So I thought there's a cheaper or better way to learn. Thankfully, COVID happened. In COVID, I was trying to do a lot of training online, end up recording some courses, and end up selling on Gumroad, and I made some money. And then there was a rise of Baidu's Indian startup, or Udemy and RC Coursera, LinkedIn Learning. And I thought, yeah, there is some supply chain content, but it's very general. It's not high quality. And because I started as a blog, and my blog get very famous, and we get 50,000 views a month, and I've got a lot of LinkedIn following gradually over the period of time, I start getting invitation to conferences, right, and globally. And when I go to conference, I meet a lot of smart people, and they are all consultants and teachers. So I said, would you willing to work with me and create academy? So working with 27 really smart people, we have created almost 80 courses, which is twice the size of any master's program you can get in supply chain, right? And it's only available for $99 a month. So it doesn't matter you are in India, you are in Kenya, you are in USA or Sweden. What you need is $99 and you're going to get the best information whenever you want.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, this is actually something we're doing within our own organization. It's like, how do we bring people up to speed on all the things going on in the supply chain? So I think I'm going to send you your website to my corporate trainers, because there's a lot of context that I suspect that you're bringing in that you're never going to get in an academic program. The biggest challenge I always see in supply chain is it's so nuanced. You know, as we talked about before the show, I mean, there's nuances by vertical, there's nuances by stakeholder. So
yes,
very interesting. I'm impressed.
Yes. And I would just add one more thing on this. Generally, the body of knowledge of supply. So the question was, what it takes to be a great supply chain person, right? And this is the answer I want to answer. So generally, historically, what used to happen is you have to be good in technical knowledge. That means if you're a procurement guy, you have to be sourcing, category management, commodity strategy, procurement strategy, SRM, so on and so forth. So if you're a supply chain planning guy, you need to know MRP, capacity planning, sales and operations planning, inventory management. If you're a logistics person, you have to know network design, you need to know contract management, you have to know warehouse design, so on and so forth. So I call this technical competencies. But you also need to know people skills, like how you manage people, how you communicate with people, lead people, project management. So this was the basic requirement. But now AI has come in, or digitalization has come in, we're going to talk about. But if you're not really technology savvy, if you don't know how to digitalize the supply chain or how to create your digitalization business case, you won't be able to become a really good supply chain person, right? So if you take any supply chain learning platform, they only focus on one or two elements, maybe technical or digitalization. So at SCM Dojo, we have a courses to make a holistic supply chain leader. So we have a courses on supply chain competencies. We have a courses on people skills. We have a courses on supply chain digitalization and AI. Just want to add that part.
So in your background, you talk a lot about supply chain digitization. This is a challenge we see frequently within the operating environment we deal with, which is the warehouse environment. One of the gaps we're seeing in the skill sets out there is really that deep understanding of data. There's the understanding of how to read KPIs and manage to the KPIs, but going deeper into that, which is how to extract the KPIs, how to bring the data sources together, how to do all of that. That's a newer skill set that has really moved into demand. And then also how to look at data from a strategic and holistic perspective. So let me give you a simple use case. We have a customer of ours that has a chain of warehouse operations up in Toronto, all on the same WMS. Each of the facilities had different taxonomy for the WMS nomenclature than the other facilities. So even trying to bring that together into a unified data model, every facility was calling things differently. They had different metrics and so forth for the same sort of process that they were doing. Because when they rolled it out, they were thinking at that site-specific level. You had different people involved in the process. They weren't being adopted from a holistic perspective. So I'd like to understand your perspective on this digital transformation that is going through in the supply chain. I'm giving you an example of what we've run into. I'd love to hear some of your stories about, as you've worked with these organizations, the problems you run into, and then how do you overcome a lot of these challenges, because it's institutionalized into the data structures of the business.
Good question. So you got two major parts of it, and I'll probably answer it in three segments. So let's take the second part first, the taxonomy and nomenclature part, right? And we use the word digital transformation. Okay. So there's a difference between digitalization and digital transformation. By definition, if anything is analog, right, and you are converting that into a digital form, maybe a paper into scan it and you can make it like a digital copy, that digitalization, right? Digitalization that means you create a processes around it to use it for benefit. Digital transformation that means you have to start using the digital asset to create value for your business and your customers, right? So if you're not creating value for you internally or for customers, you're not doing digital transformation. So first of all, you need to have clarity, right? And your example was great that your customers in Canada, similar businesses, different taxonomy and how they structure the data, so you cannot unify it to create a holistic picture, right? That is stemmed from lack of standardization, right? So I come from a lean background, quality management background, and what we were taught in quality management or ISO or lean is, if you cannot standardize, you cannot do improvement, right? So if you are making a tea, all of us, like 7 people, everybody has to make a bad tea in a standard format. So when we change the SOP, it gets improved. Same goes for digitalization. So if you got within a business, in your example, you got 4 different ways of doing the same thing, you cannot digitalize because which one is standard, which one is the best. So first of all, you have to standardize, right, to digitalize. So what are the process you're doing manually, or in your example, the how the warehouse data structure was, how they set up the part numbers, are using the field shape. So for example, if you have a field of location which is different from one warehouse to other warehouse within the same business, you cannot run the report because one field is pulling the location, one field might be putting the date of manufacture. So if you pull the data out, it's not the same data, it's not in sync, right? And that businesses need to solve. So once you solve that, now I'm going to move to the first part of your question, which is get the value. So now I think people are more worried about sharing the data than actually worried about how to use the data for their own benefit, right? And people are sitting on airs and airs. We were talking before we started the call, right? I mean, you have access to customer information. How you're using it. Again, ERP or WMS, TMS is sitting on a lot of data, right? Let me take a very simple example, which I've given to Project 44, right? If you run a simple stats of what's your planning parameters, and one of the planning parameters is planning lead time, right? When you place a POs to a supplier, when you receive. So, okay. And what is interesting to find out, so average lead time, like from supplier, is when you place a PO, it start manufacturing, then start shipping. It takes 2 days to arrive and you book in, and then 5 days to manufacture, and then 2 days to ship it out. Like typical planning value stream mapping. When you compare what's in the planning and value stream mapping, what is actually happened is 2 different things. And people don't even review that. So what planning logic does is keep driving more inventory in what the planning parameters being set up in the system, right? So if what people needs to do is to, now the technology was not there, but the technology is there right now, they use the data to give businesses prescriptive and predictive intelligence, right? Historically, the only way you can do it before is to do a deterministic programming, that you have to code the business logic to get the output. Now with the with the invention of LLM and agents, you can use your LLM as a brain and agents as your planners, right? To create the story and create the prescriptive and predictive KPIs. If you Google right now why AR supply chain sucks, why ERP sucks, not supply chain, you will find my blog in first and second position. So one of the criticism I have given to the SAP and Oracles at that point in time, there's so much data goes through them, and why I have to download all the data, do a lot of Excel planning pivots to identify what my planning parameters are and what I have to optimize. In your case of warehouse, right? Simple. I want to do a simple heat map. Where's my ABC slotting is, right? You have to download the routing data. Then you have to create some kind of, software to show me the heat mapping and tell me the improvement. Okay. But again, you have to write the code for that. But right now, with how easy it is, you can create it very quickly. So the message to you and the software, and to answer your question is, it's all starts from the willingness to use the data to drive improvement, right? And if you do that, technology is not a showstopper. Definitely not anymore. It's your willingness to understand, okay, this is our business objective. We have somebody sitting on the mind side. What values we can draw from our data to achieve the business objective. Everybody uses this word these days. Oh, we want to have agile supply chain. Want to have a resilient supply chain. We want to reduce costs out at the same time. And as this trick question, well, actually I asked you as well. So if you're a supply chain leader, and if I have to ask you to pick 2, that you can pick 2 from agile supply chain, resilient, and cost reduction, right? Can pick 2. Which one?
Well, we always go down to what's the perfect order. It's like ultimately what are the economic drivers of any warehousing operation? First thing is getting the product of quality to my customer, getting it out on time, getting it out safely, and then doing it cost effectively and profitably. Ultimately, the bottom line is driven by the latter, but the first two are the ones meeting that, being customer centric, meeting that customer objective. So SLA performance and quality are always going to be the top ones. The irony is, the one that's most focused on is the SLA side. Quality tends to be a lagging indicator unless you're setting up audit procedures as you're going through. Cost effective and profitability is easy to manage in a real-time basis. But that really is that's the latter focus, because if you can't get the first two done, you're not going to be in business.
So you were saying agility and cost would be the first focus, right? But everybody wants to achieve all the same thing because after COVID, you want your supply chain to be resilient. And to be resilient, you have to invest, right? You have to that compromise on your cost reduction part. So it's one of those three apples that you can't have all three of them at the same time. But if you look into your data, I'm pretty sure you can find enough evidence, right, to create a resilient, agile, and also identify cost reduction opportunities.
So Dr. Ahmed, the point that I agree with you completely on, the story's in the data. And that's where a data-centric approach will bring that information to the forefront. So I want to go into AI a little bit. The challenge, if you just take a ChatGPT and duct tape it onto your data set, trust me, your cost structures are going to go through the absolute roof. I mean,
it won't work. It will not work.
Yeah, it does not work. So it requires a very thoughtful approach to unifying and transforming the data. And once you've done that, then layering in the LLMs, layering in the Vertex AI and those sorts of things, it's very powerful. But there's, our philosophy is it starts with the data. You have to understand your data, bring it together, align the data to what the things that you want to accomplish are. Then when you empower that with an agentic AI system, magic can happen. If you try to lead with the agentic AI system, your cost structures are going to be crazy, and you're actually going to get a lot of hallucinations, a lot of errors in your results. I'm curious if you've seen the same sort of thing in the companies that you've worked with.
I'll ask you a question. Let's do a simple experiment, right? Okay, you run an easy metric, it's fine. And let's take any routing data out of any WMS system, right? Okay, 12 months, and drop that file into ChatGPT. And ask ChatGPT, can you give me some optimization tips? Do you think you'll get any sensible answer?
Oh, it'll just be garbage. Yeah, pretty much.
It will.
Is it scan forward? Is it scan backward? I mean, there's so many variances that occur with each process. I have no clue. Yeah,
you will not get any answer. Paid model, not paid model, whatever. Right? You might get something out of Claude, possibly. With Gemini, you will not get nothing. Grok, forget about it. DeepSeek, forget about it. Right? Copilot should be dead already. Right? Okay. I don't know why it's not dead. Now, so let's understand the difference between what LLM can do, different types of LLM, where they come from, role of agents, and role of databases. This is where people are getting really, I think, over-optimistic about the capability of AI and LLM. Right? LLM is large language model, which is pre-trained on the certain set of data. Gemini is trained on Google, YouTube, and Google search. ChatGPT, thanks to Reddit, they are trained on crappy data, which Reddit tell them to do. Copilot has copy-paste ChatGPT model. DeepSeek making their own knowledge using their own SMEs, which is fake. Grok is on Twitter. Claude has done proper ethical research. I would say they are pretty solid. But each of them have their own strengths and weaknesses in terms of what they come from. Now, as you can see, Gemini Pro, which is, in my view, the smartest LLM right now, is growing pretty fast, right? But none of them can do analysis, actually, right? Because they are not designed to do analysis. They are built to create textual knowledge. So hence the word Gen AI is a generative AI, right? You can generate stuff. You cannot ask them to do stuff. Now, this is where agent AI would come in, which is subset or body of knowledge, which is moving almost going outside Gen AI, which is agents know how to do stuff. So you can tell agent that, okay, I have written this Python code. which you can run through any SQL, blah, blah, you can do this, do that, and you can make your own decision. And if these things happen, go and find automation. And agents can do it, right? Agent can do a certain task. So the way I see that, the LLM is a brain. So you, as a user, you translate what you want. LLM take that, convert that into a mother prompt. Mother prompt send the data to agent. Then agent will perform the task, send the analysis back, and the LLM translate into the language which you understand into graphs and charts. Right. So to get the most out of your data, if you really want to use AI, you really need to understand the difference between what LLM can do, cannot do, right? Or what agents can do. So if anybody saying, oh, this is my ERP data, I don't know that, let's take a chat bot, customers can come in and answer me the question of, oh, when you're shipping data, my shipping data, or how much is the backlog? Yeah, it can read the Excel file, bring the information, but it will be rubbish because you're asking LLM to do something it's not capable to do because you haven't connected with the right agent to go and find the right information.
So what I'd like to do is explain to you how we built our agentic AI, and I'd like to get your comments on it because there's obviously some thoughts that you have that could actually be of benefit to us. So what we look at is we have a very comprehensive unified data model. Like I explained to you, we've got all the engineering data, performance data, cost, revenue, and so forth. And so that's the fractal unit for each transaction that builds in all the way into a network on a global framework. So we've created these agents that we call analysts. So I have a network analyst. That would be for the executive suite who wants to see broad base. I have the industrial engineering analyst. I have a facility analyst, supervisor analyst, and so forth. Each analyst is composed of a series of investigations. These investigations are what we derive from our interviews with our customers. So I'll give you a simple example. Overtime investigation. So when I have overtime, I often will deal with fatigue in my performance. So my cost of overtime is beyond the 50% of labor increase. I also have a degradation of productivity. So I might lose 30% of my productivity if I'm working a 12-hour shift with my associates. So therefore, my true cost of overtime might be 70 or 80% per unit more than when I'm not on overtime. So what would be that optimal staffing level? Take into account the variances that occur in my production workflow, my staffing levels of FTEs versus temps and so forth to optimize my cost structure through the organization. That would be an investigation. So I can look at all the math, look at the degradation of production and sit there and say, okay, if you were to hire 2 more FTEs, here's what the cost savings to you would be, would lower these different factors, improve these factors, that sort of thing. That would be one investigation. So I have hundreds of these investigations that we built, and then the analyst is a composition of those different investigations based on the stakeholder that we're communicating to with the analyst. The CFO looks at things much differently than, say, the industrial engineers or the operators. So then what happens is they'll run that analyst, whatever frequency is based on kind of their profile, and it does queries all the data, brings all of those calculations for us, gives them a summary, where their biggest cost savings are, where their biggest opportunities. Then the LLM is run on top of that. They can query and ask questions and say, okay, I noticed my missing time was $540,000, for this month. What facilities, should I be focusing on? Where were the supervisors that had that highest cost accrual? The system will go out there, grab that, bring it right forward to you. This is how we're approaching it because we're trying to cost contain the, we don't want to just free flow the data modeling because that's where, one, you get bad data and also it gets very expensive. And we're able to get these queries down to 10 cents, 20 cents a query versus if I just ran it against the raw data set, I can come back at $100. So I'm just curious your thoughts on that approach to how we're, I think bringing AI through the application.
If I'm going to repeat simply what he said, so we're on the same page. I think we are on the same page. So you have the investigator agent trained on after interviewing and what has been investigate. That machine learning, it's fine. And then you got analyst agent, right, as well, which is again agent, which is pre-trained on how the analysis of anything should be done from cost model to the optimization model or whatever. And then your LLM is basically an interface between the agents and the customer, right? Yeah. I think we said the same thing. So I think it is fine. And what should happen is you can increase the capability by creating more agents in a way that all customer queries might be able to answer with your investigator agent or the analyst agent. They might have, I don't know, some research queries, which I think neither analyst or investigator would be able to answer. So you might need to create a research agent of some sort, right? Like, example, get me the best market rates of the current shipment. I don't think in the current example, your investigation agent or analyst agent would be able to do a good job. But your third agent, getting to be the best rates, pick up the phone and call to 7 shippers and get me the real time, might be a better agent, right? So
one of the challenges we see in the industry is just the paradigm. When you look at the procurement cycle we go through and the pricing models with customers, they're used to really a standard monthly fee for the software. When you get into AI, it can become highly variable in cost. So right now we're building everything on a very cost contained basis, making sure it's optimized. We've blown out $2,000 or $3,000 in a day with poorly designed queries on these investigations. Once we get it optimized and brought down, it can be 10 cents, 20 cents. But when you look at query depth and all these factors that you deal with, there's that R&D cost. Well, if I were to give to a customer kind of a free flow R&D model, they would then have to be willing to accept a model where it's a variable cost basis. When you get into these large companies with procurement cycles, budgets, and so forth, it starts to change the paradigm that they've worked with in the past. So these are some things that we're kind of taking that crawl, walk, run with clients to, as we move more and more into a variable pricing model and technology.
That
makes sense. Yeah.
No, that makes sense.
So when you look at supply chain, where do you see as the big disruptors for AI? I'd love to hear your view on. You can go full stack if you want. I mean, it's definitely it's going to eat the world like data is eating the world. I'm just curious, where do you see it going, and also when? Because there was a big push into it. Everyone's kind of backing off now, going, God, I spent a lot of money and I didn't get anything. I need to rethink how I do this and then go forward again. So I'm curious where you think the progression is and the challenges are.
If you look, I just written the report. I did some research over Christmas, right? If you think from the 4 vertical perspective, which is make, source, deliver, right? Which is sourcing, procurement, planning, and logistics. I found some interesting facts, right? Of the investment done in the last 10 years, it's about 55 billion in the supply chain logistics planning startups. Only 1.5 billion of that went into planning softwares, supply chain planning. 40 billion plus gone to execution and logistics software. So you can see the trend from the money VCs, right? It's more on execution, right? Okay. Like your Project 44, FARI, Deliveroo's and things like this, where basically getting product to shipper faster, product better faster. What is interestingly missing at all was procurement, right? And if you ask me, if you do a Pareto of either do you have more planning startups and logistics and procurement, I think you can say evenly, but there's shitload of startup in procurement. You have a procure to pay software, a source to contract, SRM, right? Coupa, invoice control, you name it, and they've got it, right? I see the disruption of AI in the 3 lenses, because I don't know segmentation, popular is the right word, so I would call it 3 lenses. One of the lenses, let's take which of the sub-function of supply chain would get the biggest impact technology-wise. Let's call it threat. I think it's procurement. I think procurement related. Because if you think a job of a typical buyer, commodity manager, procurement manager, what they do? Okay, I have to find the right source. You can go to Gemini and you can find, or you can select the research, not the fast version. Select the research and it will give you the most accessible to supply search. So supply sourcing is done. There's a lot of databases available, right? So that app who was doing the supplier selection is dead right now, because I don't have to pay $490 SEO per month, because I just can ask Gemini, right? For whatever I want. Okay, cross, done. I am a community manager. I do category strategy. Great. I've got all my PO data. I upload it to ChatGPT, Gemini. We are building as SCM Dojo Sensei, which is basically an AI consultant. You can literally drop the file. It will do the whole category strategy for you. That by just dropping the file, because we have trained our agent to think like a category manager. You don't need that else, and it will create the document for you as well. Ridiculously easy in 10 minutes, right? Gone. Because most of the procurement role is either documents, workflows, and approvals. So if you think about it, LLM can do all three jobs very quickly, right? It can review the document, identify contract issues very quickly, right? And if you train the model even better, for workflows, you can use any automation software like Made.com or Ahmed and Dan, right? Okay, so that goes there. So what's left there? And how to use RAG. I'll come back to RAG later on. So I think the procurement roles can be I want to say they will be eliminated, but they will be consolidated massively, right? Because all the execution stuff eventually can get automated through agents, if not right now, right? It will be like creating PO, chasing the PO, all that. It's already happening, right? Then you move to the strategic stuff, right? Which is supply relationship management, contract management, commodities management, supply strategy, sourcing strategy. All the research work will be done by the LLMs. Then you don't need 5 category managers. You just basically need 2 category managers to manage the relationship with your suppliers. I am not saying the role of category manager or commodity manager or a buyer will be eliminated. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is you will not need 5. You maybe need 2. Okay.
I see the same in like customer service in the warehousing operations. So you're right. It's like those are so conducive to a LLM. When you get into execution, it's deep data models, and that's a far more complicated solution.
Right.
With data scientists, digital transformation, data. I mean, there's just much more data yet to deal with.
Absolutely.
It makes a lot of sense what you're saying there. I can see that trend just extending what I see in the warehousing operations on customer service. LLMs are eating that market very quickly.
I agree with you, right? Then you move to planning. The thing with the good luck with the planning is that because they are not frequent, it doesn't matter you work, it's like weekly planning or maybe unless you do a concurrent planning on daily basis, which is again done by algorithms anyway, humans can't do it. That's already automated. But if you are just doing like a weekly MRP, creating a demand plan, running SNOP, AI can take a lot of work of a demand planner, basically understanding the data, creating reports, analysis, inference. So I co-founded a company called Plantex, which is the AI-powered supply planning platform, which can basically use ML to create a forecast. You can write a chatbot, it will tell you forecast go up and down. It will tell you if you're about to get out of stock. It will tell you inventory health, like X is an obsolete. It will tell you your out of stock value. Most of it is either agentic, right? So again, you don't need 3 demand plans. You need 1 demand plan and you can run $100 million business. Okay. But it will, again, you need a demand plan and you need a good software to make it run. Okay. But in logistics, I think, especially in the physical world of logistics, AI is not going to reduce people. It will going to improve the customer experience quite drastically. The interaction with the customer will be more real time, better, quicker information. The best example of that is Amazon already. I think Amazon is way ahead than most people. What Amazon does, if any brand want to show excellence in customer service, just copy paste what Amazon has done. You're gonna have your customer will never gonna leave you.
I have so I live near a Amazon distribution center. Now on my Amazon website is deliver in 30 minutes. It just blows me away. Click here and you'll have it in 30 minutes on your doorstep. It's like, how is that possible?
And I was in Dubai with my sister, right? And in fact, Sharjah, not really Dubai. It was 9:30 in the evening. And I don't know why, what was talking about ice creams, right? I said, I've got none. I said, okay, don't worry about it. I said, I'm going to put down and get it. Don't worry about it. You're watching a movie. Let me order on the app. The order on app, the ice cream was on the door half an hour. Amazon. So it's ridiculous, actually, right? So you're right.
So Dr. Ahmed, we're coming up on time here. Would like to ask you just one last question. If you had any advice for a supply chain professional with all the change and everything that's going on, specific to digital transformation, what would you advise them?
Go all in. Don't hesitate, right? I think there's a nuance going on. The people, AI will not replace people, right? But people who knows AI will replace people who don't know AI, right? First thing. I read something very interesting recently. The best programming language right now is English, right? And yeah, and I think that is true. If you have any clear idea, if you know how to describe it in a good English, go to lovable.com, AI, lovable AI. go to Google, not Google Vertex, the other one. No. Google has launched their platform, right? I think it's called, how do I find the name? I think Google AI Studio level. It can almost give you a working enterprise level. It's not production grade, but it's enterprise level. So you can test the concept. I do not make presentations anymore. Let me give you something ridiculously I did yesterday for a customer, even it blew my whole mind. Right? So I have to prepare a proposal. Let's call it, it's one of the top 3 tag brands. I don't know the name, but let's call it. If I tell you the name, you must know. They're top 3 tag brands, right? Korean, let's call it, right? Okay, they only need to hire us a digitalization consultant, right, to create the full end-to-end B2B platform. Fine. Phone call, senior manager, explain me. Senior meeting today, what you can do. Okay. Went to Gemini, get the information. I already have the notes from this. I have my previous, work, which I've done for the customers. Uploaded that, uploaded into this to Gemini and ChatGPT, create me a project scope document, right? Like background, my deliverable objectives, functionalities of the software I'm going to create, project management strategies, why we are the best providers. Yeah. Comprehensive 6-page document. Lovely. Then I thought, they said, create me a 2-page slide. How can I do that? I don't have time to summarize. I went to Notebook LLM, copy paste, press the button. 5 minutes later, I have the presentation, which I do not even make in 2 days. The only thing I have to do is to remove the logo. I uploaded that into Canva, use the magic razor, remove the logo of Notebook LLM, upload SCMDOJO, ship out. Took me 1 hour 30 minutes to do the whole thing, which could have taken 2 days easily. So if I want to give a message, that's the message. I did this yesterday. Nobody taught me how do I own this, because when I sit down in the evening, I dedicate 1 hour, 2.5 hours, or 1 to 2 hours every day, at least 1 hour. I force myself to learn about all new tools AI YouTube can offer. I've never paid a single thing. Right? Watch YouTube videos, listen to the podcast, learning. Right? And that's the only way to stay competitive in these days, that you have to be a self-learner and self-taught. Regardless, you are PhD or master's, someone like me, or still got a lot to learn.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's commoditizing a lot of the work, the creativity, which is what you're providing. That's where the value is now. So you can embracing those tools, leverage your creativity, and literally build a business over a weekend if you wanted to. So, Dr. Ahmed, thank you for your time. Oh, we probably need to wrap up here. We should probably
Thank you. No, that's fine.
Yeah. I do want you to hold on after this, but if people want to get a hold of you, I'm going to put in the show notes, contact information. But if you want to just tell people, how to find your website, where to get a hold of you, that would be great.
Yeah. So our website is www.scmdojo.com. We have all the handles called same thing and all socials at scmdojo.com. You will find your LinkedIn, Google my name is Ahmed, or top supplies influencers. My handles on all socials, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Facebook is same, which is my name, Muddassir, Muddassir, and I is Ahmed and Dan. So Muddassirism is the handle everywhere. By all means, drop me a message. Happy to connect and happy to help. Thank you for having me. It's been a great podcast. You're being great.
Thank you for this wonderful podcast. Really enjoyed your expertise. Subscribe to the Performance Driven Warehouse wherever you get your podcasts. For proven data strategies and guidance on warehouse performance management, visit easymetrics.com. Until next time, let data lead your performance and never stop improving. Keep turning complexity into performance.